I discovered the breach at 3:47 in the morning when my phone exploded with notifications that made my heart slam against my ribcage like a jackhammer. The custom alarm system I'd installed on my generator shed was screaming bloody murder, sensors tripping in sequence as someone forced their way past the reinforced door. I was already rolling out of bed, pulling on jeans and grabbing my phone to check the security camera feeds when I saw her unmistakable silhouette on the grainy night vision footage. Patricia Henderson, the HOA president who'd made my life a living hell for the past 8 months, was actually breaking into my property at nearly 4 in the morning. My name is Tyler Ingram, and I'd moved to this planned community in Scottsdale, Arizona, thinking I'd found paradise. The house was perfect, the neighborhood looked pristine, and the HOA fees seemed reasonable. That was before I met Patricia, a 52-year-old woman with a severe bob haircut and an expression that suggested she'd been perpetually sucking on lemons since birth. She declared war on me the moment I'd installed the generator shed without her precious approval. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "This is Tyler Ingram at 473 Saguaro Heights Drive. I have an active break-in happening right now at my property. My security system caught someone forcing entry into my generator shed. I have them on camera." The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. "Sir, is the intruder trying to access your home?" "No, but they're on my property, breaking into an outbuilding. The alarm system registered forced entry. I'm watching it happen right now on my security feed." "Are you in a safe location?" "I'm inside my house. The shed is about 30 feet from my back door." "Stay inside and keep your doors locked. I'm dispatching units now. Do not confront the intruder." I assured her I wouldn't, but I was already moving to my back window, phone still pressed to my ear, watching Patricia's silhouette moving around inside my shed. The motion-activated lights had kicked on, flooding the area with bright white LED illumination. She was wearing what looked like dark yoga pants and a black hoodie, like she'd actually planned this little breaking and entering expedition. The dispatcher kept me on the line, asking for descriptions, confirming my address, keeping me calm with practiced efficiency. I told her everything I could see, including the fact that I recognized the intruder as my HOA president. That got her attention. "You know who's breaking into your property?" "Patricia Henderson. She's the president of our homeowners association. We've been in a dispute for months about my generator shed. She's been threatening to have it removed." "I see. Units are approximately 4 minutes out. Stay on the line with me." Those 4 minutes felt like 4 hours. I watched Patricia moving around in my shed, her hands touching my expensive Generac generator, rifling through my tool storage, examining the electrical panel I'd had professionally installed. The shed itself had cost me nearly $12,000 to build properly, meeting every building code, properly permitted through the city of Scottsdale. But Patricia had decided it violated some obscure HOA covenant about outbuildings, despite my lawyer's assurances that the covenant she was citing didn't actually apply to my property. Red and blue lights finally painted the street outside my house, silent but urgent. I told the dispatcher they'd arrived and she cleared me to end the call, reminding me to stay inside until officers made contact. I watched 3 patrol cars pull up, 2 from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and 1 from the Arizona Department of Public Safety. Apparently my address had flagged something in their system, maybe my previous complaints about HOA harassment. I watched from my window as 5 officers approached my property, flashlights sweeping the darkness. Patricia must have heard them or seen the lights, because she suddenly emerged from the shed, hands up, her face a mask of outrage rather than the guilt you'd expect from someone caught literally breaking and entering. One of the deputies immediately moved to secure her, and even from inside my house I could hear her voice rising in indignation. "Do you know who I am? I'm the HOA president. This shed is in violation of our community standards. I have every right to inspect it." That's when one of the deputies knocked on my back door. I unlocked it carefully, and a tall officer with graying temples and a name tag reading Deputy Morrison greeted me with a professional nod. "Mr. Ingram, I'm Deputy Morrison. Are you the property owner and the person who called this in?" "Yes, sir, that's me." "Can you tell me what happened?" I showed him my phone, pulling up the security footage that had recorded everything from 3 different angles. The timestamp was clear, showing Patricia approaching my shed at 3:43 a.m., using what looked like bolt cutters on the padlock securing the door, then forcing the door open despite the alarm immediately beginning to sound. Deputy Morrison's eyebrows rose as he watched. "That's pretty clear evidence. And you're certain that's Patricia Henderson?" "Absolutely certain. She's been harassing me about this shed for months. I have documentation of everything, dozens of threatening letters, emails, even recorded phone calls where she said she'd take care of this problem if I didn't remove the shed voluntarily. I'd like copies of all that if possible. Let me go speak with my colleagues and Miss Henderson. We'll need a formal statement from you." The next 20 minutes were surreal. I stood in my backyard, watching Patricia argue with 5 law enforcement officers, insisting she had authority to enter my property to enforce HOA rules. The officers weren't buying it. One of the state police troopers, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, finally cut through Patricia's tirade. "Madam, I don't care if you're the President of the United States. You broke onto private property at 3:45 in the morning using bolt cutters. That's criminal trespassing at minimum, breaking and entering, destruction of property. You're under arrest." The look on Patricia's face when they put handcuffs on her was something I'd treasure forever. The entitled shock, the sputtering outrage, the absolute inability to comprehend that the rules actually applied to her. They read her rights right there in my backyard, while I gave my statement to Deputy Morrison, providing him with video evidence, photos of the damaged lock, and pulling up months of documented harassment on my phone. "This is quite a collection," Morrison said, scrolling through email after email from Patricia. "Has she always been this aggressive?" It started the day after I moved in. The shed went up 2 months later, fully permitted through the city. I jumped through every hoop, got every inspection passed. But she fixated on this one covenant in the HOA documents about unapproved structures. My lawyer proved it didn't apply to my lot because of the way my property was zoned, but she wouldn't let it go. "Why a generator shed, if you don't mind me asking?" "I work from home, IT consulting for medical facilities. Power goes out. I'm not just inconvenienced, I could literally cost lives if I lose connection during a critical situation. Arizona summers, monsoon seasons, we get outages. The generator isn't a luxury, it's a necessity for my work." Morrison nodded, making notes. "And the alarm system, that's pretty sophisticated for a shed." After the 3rd time, Patricia showed up unannounced, taking photos and inspecting my property without permission. I invested in serious security. Cost me another $3,000, but it was worth every penny apparently. Another officer approached, a younger deputy with a buzz cut. "We're transporting Miss Henderson to the 4th Avenue jail for booking. Detective Chen will probably want to speak with you later this morning." This might escalate beyond simple trespassing depending on her record, and whether the DA wants to pursue additional charges. They gave me incident report numbers, assured me I'd be contacted shortly, and departed with Patricia in the back of one of the patrol cars. I watched the taillights disappear down Saguaro Heights Drive as my neighbor's lights started flickering on, faces appearing in windows. By sunrise, the entire neighborhood would know their HOA president had been arrested breaking into my generator shed. I spent the rest of the night too wired to sleep, reviewing footage, backing up files to multiple cloud storage locations, and documenting everything with timestamps and notes. At 6:15 a.m., just as the Arizona sun was painting the desert sky orange and pink, my doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was Zachary Morrison, my next-door neighbor, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression of gleeful disbelief. "Dude, please tell me what I think actually happened." I accepted the coffee gratefully and gave him the abbreviated version. Zachary had been one of the few friendly faces in the neighborhood, someone else who'd run afoul of Patricia's tyrannical management style over a paint color dispute. She actually broke in, with bolt cutters. At 3:45 in the morning, he started laughing, nearly spilling his coffee. "That's the most Patricia thing I've ever heard. She's been threatening to take action about violations for years, but actually committing crimes. That's a new level." The deputies seemed pretty confident about the charges sticking. Breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, destruction of property for the lock. Good. Maybe now the rest of the board will wake up and realize she's been out of control. Half the neighborhood lives in fear of her stupid violation notices. We talked for another hour, Zachary filling me in on other Patricia incidents I hadn't heard about. The couple 3 streets over who'd been fined repeatedly for having their trash cans visible from the street, even though they were in an enclosed side yard. The retired veteran who'd been cited for flying the American flag on a pole she claimed was 3 inches too tall. The young family threatened with a lien on their property over a tree she insisted was dead, despite an arborist's report confirming it was healthy. By 8 a.m., my phone was ringing with a call from an unknown local number. I answered to find Detective Sarah Chen on the other end, asking if I could come down to the station to provide a more detailed statement. "Absolutely. When works for you? This morning if possible. Miss Henderson's attorney is already making noise about wrongful arrest, HOA authority, all sorts of creative interpretations of property law. I want your evidence documented officially before this gets messier." I drove to the sheriff's office substation in North Scottsdale, a modern building that looked more like corporate offices than a police station. Detective Chen met me in the lobby, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with short black hair and an efficient manner that put me at ease immediately. The interview room was nothing like the stark spaces you see on TV. It was actually fairly comfortable, more like a small conference room with decent chairs and a table that didn't look like it had witnessed 1,000 crimes. Chen had a laptop set up and a case file already thick with documentation. "Mr. Ingram, I appreciate you coming in so quickly. I've reviewed the initial reports and the video footage Deputy Morrison forwarded. It's pretty damning evidence, but I need to understand the full context. Walk me through your relationship with Miss Henderson from the beginning." I spent the next 2 hours laying out everything, moving into the community in March of the previous year, the initial pleasant interactions during my first month, the shift when I'd announced plans to build a generator shed, Patricia's immediate opposition, despite the structure being fully compliant with city codes, the escalating harassment, threatening letters, impromptu inspections of my property, fines for violations that didn't exist. Chen took detailed notes, asking pointed questions about dates, witnesses, Documentation. I'd brought my laptop and pulled up the comprehensive file I'd been maintaining, showing her everything organized chronologically. "You're very well documented," she observed. "Most people don't keep this level of detail. I'm in IT. Documentation is second nature. Plus, my lawyer advised me to record everything once Patricia started getting aggressive about the shed." Smart lawyer. Speaking of which, has Patricia or the HOA filed any legal action against you regarding the shed? They threatened to. My lawyer sent them a cease and desist about 3 months ago, explaining exactly why their covenant interpretations didn't apply to my property. We didn't hear anything back officially, but Patricia's harassment actually intensified after that. Chen pulled up something on her laptop, frowning. "According to the HOA documents I've obtained, there's nothing in the current covenants that would prohibit your generator shed, especially given that it's properly permitted through the city and meets all setback requirements. In fact, Arizona statute actually protects homeowners' rights to install backup power systems." That's what my lawyer said. Patricia was citing a covenant that applied to a different section of the development, one with smaller lots and different zoning. Then legally, she had absolutely no grounds to oppose your shed, let alone take enforcement action. Chen leaned back, studying me. "Mr. Ingram, I'm going to be straight with you. This case is going to get complicated. Miss Henderson is already claiming she had authority to inspect your property based on HOA bylaws. Her attorney is pushing hard for dismissal, arguing this is a civil matter, not criminal." My stomach sank. "But she broke into my property at 3:45 in the morning with bolt cutters." "That's not an inspection. That's breaking and entering." "I agree completely, and I believe the evidence supports criminal charges, but I need you to understand that HOA cases can get legally messy. There are sometimes provisions about property access for inspections, and her attorney will try to twist that into justification. Do those provisions include destroying locks and entering property without notice in the middle of the night?" Chen smiled grimly. "No, they absolutely do not. Which is why I'm confident we have a strong case. I'm recommending the DA pursue charges for criminal trespassing, criminal damage, and breaking and entering. Given her position and the evidence of ongoing harassment, we're also looking at potential stalking charges." Stalking. The pattern of behavior you've documented, the repeated unwanted contact, the escalating confrontations. It fits the legal definition under Arizona law. Obviously, that's the DA's call, but it's something we're considering. We wrapped up the interview around 11 a.m. Chen assured me she'd keep me informed as the case progressed, and reminded me to contact her immediately if Patricia or anyone from the HOA contacted me directly. Driving home, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and anxiety. Part of me was thrilled that Patricia was finally facing consequences for her behavior, but another part worried about retaliation, about how the rest of the HOA board might react, about whether this would make my life in the community even more difficult. Those concerns multiplied when I pulled onto my street and saw the crowd gathered in front of my house. At least 20 neighbors were standing on the sidewalk, some looking curious, others openly hostile. As I parked in my driveway, several of them approached. A man I vaguely recognized from neighborhood events stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You got Patricia arrested? Are you kidding me? She's been running this HOA for 8 years. She broke into my property in the middle of the night. I didn't get her arrested, she got herself arrested. That shed is a violation. She had every right to inspect it." Zachary appeared from somewhere in the crowd, positioning himself between me and the angry neighbor. "Actually, Doug, the shed isn't a violation. It's fully permitted and legally compliant. Patricia was wrong, and she committed crimes trying to enforce rules that don't exist. Doug sputtered, looking around for support. A few people nodded along with him, but I noticed more neighbors looking uncertain, uncomfortable with the confrontation. An older woman I'd seen walking her dog spoke up. "I don't know the details about the shed, but breaking into someone's property at 4 in the morning seems extreme, doesn't it? If she had legal authority, why not do an inspection during normal hours with proper notice?" "Exactly," Zachary said. "This isn't about HOA rules. This is about Patricia going way over the line." The crowd argued among themselves for another few minutes before gradually dispersing. I thanked Zachary for the backup and escaped into my house, emotionally exhausted despite it being barely noon. The rest of the day brought a steady stream of developments. At 2 p.m., I received a certified letter from the HOA's attorney, informing me that I was being fined $5,000 for causing distress to HOA leadership, and that my shed was still considered a violation subject to forced removal. I immediately forwarded it to my own lawyer, who called me back within an hour. "This is retaliatory and completely unenforceable," Marcus Chen told me. Marcus was a property law specialist who'd been representing me since the shed dispute began. "They're panicking because Patricia got arrested." Save this letter. It's actually evidence of ongoing harassment. I'm going to file a motion for a restraining order against the HOA taking any action related to your shed. Can they fine me for having their president arrested? They can try, but it won't hold up in any court. You exercised your legal right to report a crime. They can't punish you for that. In fact, this letter might be grounds for a lawsuit against the HOA for harassment and abuse of authority. I don't want to sue anybody, Marcus. I just want to live in peace and have my generator shed left alone. I understand, but you need to protect yourself. These situations can escalate quickly. Let me handle the legal maneuvering. That evening brought another development. At 7:30 p.m., 2 different HOA board members showed up at my door. I recognized them from community meetings but didn't know them well. Robert Chen and Linda Martinez, both looking uncomfortable and apologetic. "Mr. Ingram, we're so sorry to disturb you," Linda began. "Can we speak with you for a few minutes?" I hesitated but let them in, keeping our conversation in the foyer where I could easily show them out if needed. Robert spoke first. "We want to apologize for Patricia's behavior. The board held an emergency meeting this afternoon. We're placing her on suspension pending the outcome of the criminal case. We had no idea she was planning anything like this," Linda added quickly. "We knew she was upset about your shed, but breaking into your property, that's completely unacceptable." "I appreciate you saying that, but I received a certified letter this afternoon threatening me with fines and shed removal." They looked at each other, confused. Robert frowned. "We didn't authorize any letter. Who sent it?" "Your HOA attorney, apparently." $5,000 fine for causing distress to HOA leadership. Linda's face went pale. "Oh my God. Patricia must have instructed him before she was arrested. Robert, we need to rescind that immediately." "Agreed. Mr. Ingram, please disregard that letter. The board will send you official notification that any fines or actions related to this matter are withdrawn. Your shed is fully permitted and we have no issue with it." "What about Patricia's position? Is she still president?" "Suspended for now," Robert said carefully. "If she's convicted of any crimes related to last night, she'll be removed from the board entirely. Our bylaws prohibit convicted criminals from serving in leadership." They left after assuring me the board wanted to handle this properly and prevent any further harassment. I wanted to believe them, but years of Patricia's behavior had made me skeptical of anything related to the HOA. The next week was a blur of legal proceedings. Patricia was arraigned on charges of criminal trespassing, criminal damage, and breaking and entering. She pleaded not guilty, posting bail and returning home. My lawyer filed for a restraining order, which was granted, prohibiting Patricia from coming within 500 feet of my property or contacting me directly. That restraining order probably saved me from worse harassment, because Patricia apparently went on a campaign to turn the neighborhood against me. I heard through Zachary and other friendly neighbors that she was calling an emergency HOA meeting, spreading stories that I'd somehow entrapped her, that the criminal charges were a misunderstanding, that I was threatening the stability of the entire community. The emergency meeting happened on a Thursday evening. I wasn't required to attend, and my lawyer advised me to stay away, but curiosity and a desire to defend myself drew me there anyway. The community center was packed with over 100 residents, the atmosphere tense and divided. Patricia stood at the front despite her suspension, looking defiant and righteous. She started speaking the moment I walked in, pointing at me dramatically. "There's the man trying to destroy our community. Tyler Ingram, who thinks he's above our rules, who got me arrested for trying to protect our property values." I stayed calm, taking a seat near the back. Robert Chen, running the meeting in Patricia's absence, tried to restore order. "Patricia, you're suspended and not authorized to speak at this meeting. Please sit down." "I will not sit down. This community needs to know the truth." Linda Martinez stood up, her voice firm. "Patricia, security will remove you if you don't comply. You violated Mr. Ingram's property rights, you were arrested, and you're facing criminal charges. The board has reviewed everything and his shed is legal. You were wrong." The room erupted in chaos, some people supporting Patricia, others supporting me, everyone talking over each other. Robert banged a gavel repeatedly, finally getting enough quiet to speak. "Everyone, please. We called this meeting to address the concerns and confusion. Let me be absolutely clear about the facts." He pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him, showing city permits, property surveys, and legal opinions. Mr. Ingram's generator shed is fully permitted through the city of Scottsdale. It meets all building codes and zoning requirements. The HOA covenant Patricia cited does not apply to his property. This has been confirmed by 3 separate attorneys. Then, why did Patricia say it was a violation? Someone shouted from the crowd. Because Patricia was mistaken. She fixated on enforcing rules that don't exist. And when Mr. Ingram proved her wrong legally, she escalated to criminal behavior. Another resident stood up, a woman I'd seen at a few community events. "I want to know how this affects the rest of us. If Patricia was wrong about this, what else has she been wrong about? I've paid thousands in fines over the years for violations she cited." That opened floodgates. Person after person stood up, sharing stories of Patricia's overreach, questionable citations, fines for violations that seemed dubious at best. The meeting transformed from a referendum on my shed into an examination of Patricia's entire tenure as HOA president. By the end of the 2-hour meeting, the board had voted unanimously to conduct a comprehensive audit of all violations and fines issued under Patricia's leadership. They also voted to formally apologize to me and reimburse me for the damaged lock and any security system expenses related to the break-in. Patricia stormed out halfway through, but not before hissing at me as she passed my seat. "This isn't over." That threat brought a visit from Detective Chen the next morning. I'd reported the violation of the restraining order immediately, and Chen took it seriously. "Mr. Ingram, Patricia Henderson is escalating. I want you to be very careful. Document everything. Keep your security system active, and call us immediately if she approaches your property or contacts you again. Do you think she's actually dangerous? Chen chose her words carefully. I think she's someone who doesn't believe rules apply to her, who's facing consequences for the first time in years, and who's desperate. That combination can lead to unpredictable behavior. Better safe than sorry. The criminal case moved forward slowly through the Arizona court system. Patricia's attorney tried multiple tactics to get the charges dismissed, arguing HOA authority, claiming she believed she had permission to access the shed, even suggesting the alarm system was an attractive nuisance that had lured her to investigate. None of it worked. The video evidence was too clear, the timeline too damning, my documentation too comprehensive. 3 months after the break-in, Patricia's attorney approached my lawyer with a plea bargain proposal. In exchange for pleading guilty to reduce charges, Patricia would resign from the HOA board, accept a 5-year restraining order prohibiting her from contacting me or interfering with my property, and agree to pay restitution for damages and my legal fees. Marcus called me to discuss it. The DA is willing to accept this deal. Patricia would plead guilty to criminal trespassing and criminal damage, both misdemeanors. She'd get probation, community service, and the restraining order. The breaking and entering charge, which is a felony, would be dropped. What do you think? Honestly, I think it's a reasonable resolution. You get restitution, she has a criminal record, and you're protected by a long-term restraining order. If we go to trial, there's always some risk, even with strong evidence. And trials are expensive and time-consuming. I don't want her to get away with this completely. She's not getting away with it. She'll have a criminal record. She's been removed from the HOA board. She's facing financial penalties, and everyone in your community knows what she did. That's significant consequences. After sleeping on it, I agreed to the plea bargain. The court appearance was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I attended, wanting to see Patricia face the judge and officially admit her guilt. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, just a few rows of seats in a municipal courthouse in Phoenix. Patricia sat at the defense table with her attorney, her back rigid with suppressed anger. She avoided looking at me as the judge reviewed the plea agreement. Judge Rachel Martinez was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She questioned Patricia directly about the plea. Miss Henderson, do you understand that by pleading guilty to these charges, you're admitting that you criminally trespassed on Mr. Ingram's property and damaged his property? Yes, Your Honor. Patricia's voice was barely audible. And you understand you'll have a criminal record, be placed on probation for 2 years, complete 200 hours of community service, and pay restitution? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Martinez looked at Patricia for a long moment. I've reviewed the evidence in this case, Miss Henderson. The video footage, the witness statements, the documented history of harassment. I want you to understand something very clearly. You held a position of authority in your community, and you abused that authority. You let your ego and your desire for control lead you to commit crimes against a neighbor. That's not just illegal, it's a betrayal of trust. I understand, Your Honor. I hope you do. Because if you violate this restraining order, if you contact Mr. Ingram or interfere with his property in any way, you'll be back in front of me facing jail time. Is that clear? Yes, Your Honor. The judge accepted the plea, sentenced Patricia according to the agreement, and dismissed us. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. It was finally over. The HOA's audit of Patricia's tenure revealed what many of us suspected. Over her 8 years as president, She'd issued over 300 violation notices and fines, many of them questionable or outright improper. The board ended up rescinding about 40% of them and issuing refunds. My neighborhood Facebook group exploded with discussions about HOA reform, proper governance, and preventing future abuses. Robert Chen took over as interim HOA president and proved to be reasonable and fair. He reached out to me personally to apologize again and assure me the HOA wanted to move forward positively. "We're implementing new policies," he told me over coffee at a local shop. "No more surprise inspections. All violation notices have to be reviewed by 2 board members, and we're hiring a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations." Patricia was given too much unilateral authority. That sounds like good changes. "I never wanted to be at war with the HOA, Robert. I just wanted to have my generator shed and live peacefully." "I know. And I'm sorry we let Patricia turn this community into her personal fiefdom for so long. We should have reined her in years ago." Life slowly returned to normal. My generator shed stood unmolested, a small monument to the principle that homeowners have rights and HOA boards can't act like dictators. Patricia moved out of the neighborhood about 6 months after her conviction, unable to face the daily reminder of her fall from power. I ran into her once, completely by accident, at a Home Depot in Temp. We were both in the electrical aisle, reaching for supplies, and our eyes met for just a second. She looked older, smaller somehow, without the armor of authority she'd worn for so long. She turned and walked away without a word, honoring the restraining order and perhaps finally learning that actions have consequences. The story spread beyond my neighborhood, becoming something of a local legend. Other HOA members dealing with similar issues reached out to me for advice, asking how I'd documented everything, how I'd protected myself legally. I started compiling a guide for homeowners facing HOA overreach, working with Marcus to ensure the legal advice was sound. Zachary and I became close friends, bonding over our shared experiences with Patricia's tyranny. He'd been battling her for 2 years over the paint color on his shutters, a shade of blue she insisted violated community standards, despite it being explicitly listed as approved in the HOA documents. The audit vindicated him too, and he finally got to tell Patricia exactly where she could stick her violation notices. The generator shed itself became oddly famous in the neighborhood. Kids would point it out on walks. Parents would tell the story of the HOA president who broke into it and got arrested. I ended up installing a small plaque near the door, just a simple statement. "Properly permitted structure, ESD, 2024. It made me smile every time I saw it. My work thrived without the constant stress of HOA harassment. The generator proved its worth during a particularly bad monsoon season that following summer, keeping my systems running during multiple outages while half my neighbors sat in the dark. A few of them even asked for recommendations on installing their own backup power, having seen the value firsthand. The HOA under Robert's leadership became something it should have been all along. A boring administrative entity that maintained common areas, enforced reasonable rules fairly, and stayed out of homeowners' business unless absolutely necessary. Violation notices dropped by 70% in the first year, and the few that were issued were legitimate safety concerns or clear covenant violations. I stayed in that house, in that community, determined not to be driven out by what had happened. It was my home. I'd fought for my right to live there peacefully, and I wasn't going anywhere. The generator shed stood as a testament to standing up for your rights, to documenting everything, to the fact that even people in authority positions aren't above the law. Sometimes late at night, I'd look at the security footage from that 3:47 a.m. breach, watching Patricia cut through my lock and force open the door. It reminded me how close things came to being much worse. If I hadn't installed that alarm system, if I hadn't documented everything meticulously, if I hadn't stood up for myself legally, she might have gotten away with it. She might have convinced the community I was the problem, might have forced me to remove my legally permitted structure, might have continued her reign of HOA terror indefinitely. Instead, the alarm system did its job. The sheriff and state police responded. The evidence was overwhelming. Justice, slow and imperfect as it sometimes is, ultimately prevailed. Patricia faced consequences. The HOA reformed, and I got to keep my generator shed. My lawyer Marcus became a friend too, often citing my case as an example in his property law seminars. He told me once that the comprehensive documentation I'd maintained had made his job almost easy, that most clients don't think to record and organize evidence until it's too late. You treated the conflict like an IT problem, he said. You documented everything, backed up your files, created redundant systems. That's why you won. He wasn't wrong. My professional training had served me well in an unexpected context. Every email saved, every interaction logged with dates and times, every piece of evidence carefully organized and accessible. When Detective Chen needed documentation, I could pull it up immediately. When the judge reviewed the case, the timeline was crystal clear. The community changed in other subtle ways. People became more willing to question HOA decisions, to ask for justification of violations, to demand fair treatment. The board meetings, once sparsely attended rubber stamp sessions for Patricia's edicts, became actual forums for discussion and debate. Homeowners felt empowered to participate in governance rather than simply submit to it. I even served on the board briefly, a one-year term filling a vacancy. It gave me insight into how HOAs should function, the balance between maintaining community standards and respecting individual property rights. I pushed for clear, written policies about violations, inspections, and due process. Most of my proposals passed, creating a framework that protected homeowners while still allowing the HOA to address legitimate concerns. The restitution Patricia paid covered my damaged lock, security system monitoring costs, and legal fees. It came to just over $8,000, processed through the court system and paid in monthly installments over 2 years. Every check felt like validation, a tangible acknowledgement that I'd been wronged and deserved compensation. Her community service assignment was fitting too. The judge ordered her to work with a tenants' rights organization, helping people who'd been mistreated by landlords and property management companies. I like to think maybe she learned something from that experience, though I honestly doubt it. People like Patricia rarely truly change. They just find new ways to exert control. The restraining order remained in effect for 5 years, though Patricia moved out of state after about 2 years. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine she'd relocated to Oregon, somewhere near Portland. I wondered if she'd learned her lesson, or if she was terrorizing a new HOA somewhere else. Not my problem anymore. My generator shed still stands, properly maintained and regularly serviced. It's kicked on dozens of times over the years, keeping my power steady during outages, monsoons, and grid problems. Every time it automatically starts up, seamlessly maintaining electricity to my home office. I think about that 3:47 a.m. alarm notification and feel grateful for the security system that protected me. The story became something of a cautionary tale in HOA management circles. I was contacted by a homeowners' rights blog asking to share my experience, which I did with names changed to protect privacy. The article went viral in property management communities, spawned discussions on dozens of forums, and apparently became required reading in some HOA management certification courses. The title of that article was simple: When HOA Presidents Break the Law. It detailed Patricia's escalating harassment, the break-in, the arrest, and the legal consequences. But it also focused on the lessons. Document everything, know your rights, don't be afraid to involve law enforcement when crimes occur, and understand that HOA authority has limits defined by both law and common sense. Other people reached out with their own HOA horror stories, some even worse than mine. A veteran in Florida, whose HOA tried to ban him from flying the American flag despite federal law protecting that right. A disabled homeowner in Texas, whose HOA fought her wheelchair ramp installation. A young family in Nevada, whose HOA foreclosed on their home over a $100 unpaid fine that they'd never received notice about. Each story reinforced the importance of HOA accountability, of homeowners knowing their rights, of the legal system being willing to intervene when property managers and board members abuse their authority. My case was just one example, but it resonated because it showed the system working correctly when someone stood up for themselves. Years later, I'm still in that house. The neighborhood remains pleasant under reasonable HOA leadership. My generator shed is an accepted part of the landscape, no longer controversial or noteworthy to anyone except visitors who hear the story. I've added solar panels since then, another properly permitted improvement that might have sent Patricia into apoplexy, but generated only a few emails about installation schedules from the current board. The whole experience taught me important lessons about standing up for yourself, about the importance of documentation and evidence, about the fact that people in authority positions can abuse that authority if left unchecked. It taught me that alarm systems are worth every penny, that security cameras provide invaluable protection, and that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to force them to face real consequences for their actions. Patricia Henderson broke into my generator shed at 3:47 in the morning, thinking her position as HOA president put her above the law. The alarm system notified law enforcement. She was arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. The system worked. Justice was served. And I got to keep my generator shed, standing proud and properly permitted in my backyard, a symbol of homeowner rights prevailing over HOA overreach. Looking back, I wouldn't change anything except maybe installing that security system sooner. The conflict was stressful, the legal process was time-consuming, and dealing with Patricia's harassment took a toll. But standing up for my rights, protecting my property, and holding someone accountable for criminal behavior was worth all of it. The generator shed stands as more than just a backup power system. It's a reminder that homeowners have rights, that proper documentation and legal preparation matter, that authority figures can't act with impunity, and that sometimes the best defense against harassment is a good alarm system and the willingness to let it do its job. Patricia found that out the hard way at 3:47 in the morning, when my shed's alarm system notified the sheriff and state police that someone was breaking in. She thought she was above consequences. She learned differently in handcuffs in my backyard, surrounded by law enforcement officers who didn't care about her HOA title or her sense of entitlement. She learned that breaking and entering is a crime no matter who you are or what position you hold. And she learned that some homeowners won't back down when they are in the right, That's the story of how my HOA president broke into my generator shed and ended up with a criminal record instead of the victory she'd expected. It's a story about documentation, preparation, standing firm on your rights, and the sweet satisfaction of watching someone face consequences for behavior they never thought would catch up with them. And every time my generator automatically kicks on during a power outage, keeping my home office running smoothly, I think about that night and smile. The epilogue to this story is that the neighborhood thrived once Patricia was gone. Property values actually increased once her reign of terror ended, and people felt comfortable making reasonable improvements to their homes without fear of arbitrary violations. The HOA operated efficiently under professional management, handling actual problems rather than manufacturing controversies. I still live there, in my properly permitted house with my properly permitted generator shed and my recently installed properly permitted solar panels. The community is peaceful. The HOA is boring in the best possible way, and I work from home without worrying about power outages or tyrants with bolt cutters. Patricia Henderson taught me valuable lessons, though probably not the ones she intended. She taught me that documentation matters, that standing up for yourself is worth the stress, and that alarm systems connected to law enforcement are an excellent investment. That 3:47 a.m. notification changed everything, transforming a harassment campaign into a criminal case, exposing years of HOA abuse, and ultimately making my neighborhood a better place to live. Sometimes justice takes time, but when it arrives, backed by video evidence and sheriff's deputies, it's incredibly satisfying.